NVL Travel Documentary. What defines a place? The beauty in its skyline, or the stories hidden beneath it? Texas, land of endless highways, iconic music, and bold dreams. But beneath the lights of Houston and Austin lies a side of this state that few travelers ever witness. Growing tent cities, rising addiction, and tens of thousands without a place to call home. At NVL Travel Documentary, we believe that every country has two sides, the one on the postcard and the one that rarely makes it into travel guides. And today, we're bringing you the untold truth, not just facts about countries, but the lives shaped by those facts. This is more than just a country documentary. It's a human journey through hope, hardship, and the search for belonging. Because to truly understand a place, we have to see it whole. Number 1. Behind the shine. The hidden homeless crisis in Texas. When people think of Texas, they often picture bustling cities, rich culture, and southern charm. But behind the bright lights of Houston, Austin, and Dallas lies a growing crisis that's becoming impossible to ignore: homelessness. As of early 2025, more than 25,000 people across Texas are living without permanent shelter. And that number isn't standing still. It's climbing by roughly 5% every single year. This steady rise paints a troubling picture of a state struggling to keep up with the needs of its most vulnerable residents. Let's break that down. Houston alone, the fourth largest city in the country, accounts for nearly 10,000 individuals experiencing homelessness. In Austin and Dallas, shelters are overflowing, and street encampments have become a common sight. These urban areas, while having some infrastructure in place, are still overwhelmed by the demand for housing and support services. The skyrocketing cost of living, limited access to affordable housing, and underfunded mental health care are only adding fuel to the fire. But the crisis isn't just hitting big cities. Rural Texas, often forgotten in larger policy discussions, is quietly suffering. Though the numbers may be smaller, the impact is just as severe, if not more. Many small towns lack the basic services to support unhoused residents. There are fewer shelters, less access to medical care, and hardly any transportation options. That means people in rural communities are not only vulnerable, but also isolated, making their situations even harder to escape. What's even more alarming is that this issue isn't limited to adults. Families with children now make up a growing portion of the homeless population, a sign that the crisis is spreading into every corner of society. In fact, according to the most recent statewide report, nearly 1 in 5 homeless individuals in Texas is under the age of 18. So while Texas continues to grow in wealth, diversity, and innovation, it's also facing a human crisis that demands attention. This isn't just a statistic, it's a call to action. Behind every number is a person with a story, a past, and the hope for a better future. Number 2. Digging deeper. What's causing homelessness? Now let's talk about the why, because homelessness doesn't just happen overnight. It's the result of deep-rooted problems that have been building for years. In Texas, there are 5 major causes behind this growing crisis. First up, the housing crisis. Rent prices across Texas have been rising much faster than people's incomes. In cities like Austin, the average rent has jumped by over 30% in the past 3 years, while wages have barely budged. There's also a serious shortage of affordable housing, especially for folks with disabilities or chronic illnesses who need extra support. And with urban redevelopment, or what people call gentrification, longtime residents are getting pushed out of their homes. It's no surprise that many end up living in temporary shelters, cars, or even on the streets. Next is economic instability. Let's be real, a lot of people are just one paycheck away from losing their home. Unemployment, low wages, and unstable job markets make it hard for folks to cover basic living expenses. In Texas, nearly 1 in 7 workers still earns less than $15 an hour in 2025. For people without a college degree or specialized skills, options are limited. And when the economy takes a hit, like during industry shifts or recessions, housing insecurity spikes. Mental health and addictions are also major factors. About 40% of unhoused individuals in Texas struggle with substance use, whether it's alcohol, opioids, or other drugs. Many also live with untreated mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, or PTSD, often triggered by trauma or abuse. But here's the kicker: stigma keeps people from seeking help, and even when they do, services are either too limited or too expensive to access. That brings us to addiction and social breakdown. Once someone loses housing, it becomes even harder to get clean. No stability means no consistent treatment, and that creates a vicious cycle. Addiction leads to more addiction. Texas still lacks enough affordable rehab programs, and waiting lists can stretch for months. Finally, there's a gap in social support systems. People leaving prison, escaping domestic violence, or dealing with childcare challenges often have nowhere to turn. Without strong re-entry programs, affordable childcare, or healthcare, they fall through the cracks. All these issues are connected, and they're not going away unless we address them together. Number 3, more than personal: how homelessness affects us all. Homelessness isn't just a personal struggle, it's a challenge that affects everyone in the community. The social consequences are deep, complex, and often closer to home than we think. Let's start with the broader community impact. When large numbers of people live on the streets without access to sanitation or healthcare, public health risks go up fast. In areas with high homeless populations, cities have seen rising rates of infectious diseases like hepatitis A and tuberculosis. Public spaces, parks, sidewalks, transit stops can become overcrowded, leading to tension between housed residents and people experiencing homelessness. And yes, it's true, crime rates often increase in these high-stress environments. But it's important to understand that many unhoused people are victims rather than perpetrators. This tension breeds misunderstanding and fear, which only adds fuel to the fire. The result? Stigma and discrimination. People stop seeing the unhoused as neighbors in need and start seeing them as a problem to push away. That kind of divide weakens the very fabric of our communities. But beyond the big picture issues, the personal pain of homelessness is devastating. Every day, people without stable housing face serious danger from assault, theft, and even sexual violence. In fact, according to recent data from early 2025, nearly 30% of unhoused individuals in Texas have experienced some form of violent attack while living on the streets. Then there's the physical toll. Without proper shelter, exposure to extreme weather, from blistering Texas heat to freezing cold snaps, can be life-threatening. Add to that limited access to food, clean water, and health care, and basic survival becomes a daily struggle. And we can't forget the emotional side. Living without a home often leads to a deep sense of hopelessness. People feel invisible, powerless, like they've lost control of their own lives. That kind of psychological weight can be just as heavy as the physical challenges. The long-term effects? Without access to education or stable jobs, people fall into a cycle of poverty that's incredibly hard to break. For children and young adults experiencing homelessness, this can mean missing school, missing opportunities, and losing the chance at a better future. At the end of the day, homelessness doesn't just impact individuals, it weakens the entire community. And if we want to build a stronger, safer, more compassionate Texas, we need to face that truth head on. Number 4, what's being done? Policies and programs in action. So what's being done to tackle homelessness in Texas? While the challenges are huge, there are efforts underway, from government programs to grassroots support, all trying to make a difference. Let's start with the state government. Texas has rolled out programs like the Texas Homeless Assistance Program, which offers temporary housing, mental health support, and helps individuals transition back into society. In recent years, more transitional housing units and emergency shelters have been built, especially in larger cities, to meet urgent needs. There's also collaboration happening across federal, state, and local levels. For example, coordinated entry systems now help match people to the right services faster. But even with all this effort, the system still struggles. Many programs are underfunded, and for people on the street, figuring out how to access these services can feel like navigating a maze. As of 2025, demand continues to far exceed available resources. That's where nonprofits and charities step in. Across Texas, these organizations are on the front lines every single day. Groups like Houston Rescue Mission and the Dallas Homeless Coalition provide more than just meals or beds. They offer job training, addiction recovery support, counseling, and a sense of dignity. In fact, according to a recent statewide survey, nonprofit shelters provided nearly 70% of all emergency beds available in Texas last winter. These groups don't just fill gaps, they build bridges. Many of them work hand in hand with local communities to raise awareness, reduce stigma, and advocate for long-term change. Whether it's volunteers serving food or professionals offering trauma-informed care, these organizations are powered by compassion and action. Of course, there's still a long road ahead, but these efforts, both public and private, show what's possible when people come together to care for one another. Because at the end of the day, homelessness isn't just a housing issue, it's a human issue, and solving it takes all of us. Number 5, real challenges, real chances. Even with programs in place and passionate people working on the ground, there's no denying it, solving homelessness in Texas is an uphill battle. But within every challenge, there's also opportunity. Let's start with the hard truth. The challenges are real. One of the biggest problems? Long-term funding. Many programs operate on short-term grants, which means they're constantly scrambling to keep the lights on, let alone expand services. Without stable funding, it's tough to build real, lasting change. Then there's the issue of short-term fixes. Emergency shelters and meal programs are vital, no question, but they don't tackle the deeper problems like income inequality, mental health, or the lack of affordable housing. We're just treating the symptoms. And of course, bureaucracy can slow things down. Texas has multiple agencies and organizations trying to help, but when systems don't talk to each other, resources get lost, and people fall through the cracks. It's frustrating for service providers, and even more so for those who need help the most. But here's the good news. There are real opportunities on the horizon. One major area of hope is housing. By investing in affordable housing, not just building new units, but also renovating old ones, Texas can start to close the gap between income and rent. Some cities have already launched pilot programs in 2025, showing that it's possible to house more people without breaking the budget. Another key opportunity is job training. Partnering with local businesses, trade schools, and community colleges can help people gain real skills and find steady employment. And that's a game changer, because with a stable job, people are far less likely to end up back on the streets. And maybe the biggest opportunity of all, community connection. When neighborhoods, nonprofits, schools, churches, and businesses come together, they create support systems that last. It takes the pressure off the government and builds something more sustainable, a community that takes care of its own. Yes, the road is long, but Texas has the people, the heart, and the potential to turn things around. The question now is, are we ready to act and not just react? Number 6, the power of people, community and volunteers in motion. When it comes to fighting homelessness, government programs and nonprofits are crucial, but they can't do it alone. The real magic happens when everyday people get involved. That's where volunteers and local communities step in, bringing not just services, but something just as powerful: compassion. Let's start with volunteer programs. Across Texas, thousands of volunteers are showing up every week to serve meals, run shelters, raise funds, and offer emotional support. They're not just handing out food, they're giving people a sense of dignity. For someone who's lost almost everything, just being seen and treated with kindness can spark hope again. Whether it's organizing a coat drive in the winter or spending a few hours at a local shelter, volunteers play a direct role in rebuilding lives. And more than that, they remind people experiencing homelessness that they still matter. But it doesn't stop there. Communities are getting creative. In some neighborhoods, community gardens are popping up, providing fresh food and a peaceful place to connect. For people who've been through trauma, just digging in the soil, growing something, and feeling part of a group can be incredibly healing. Then there are mobile clinics, a brilliant local solution. These vans are staffed with volunteer doctors and nurses who bring healthcare directly to the streets. No paperwork, no appointments, no judgment, just care. And for someone who hasn't seen a doctor in years, that can be life-changing. These kinds of grassroots efforts are powerful because they're personal, practical, and easy to replicate. They don't require massive budgets or red tape, just a little time, heart, and teamwork. And here's the real takeaway. When a community takes ownership of the problem, solutions become stronger and more sustainable. Volunteers might not have all the answers, but they show up, and that alone can be the beginning of change. Because in the end, homelessness isn't just a housing issue, it's a community issue, and that means the community, all of us, has a role to play. Number 7, looking ahead, a blueprint for lasting change. Looking forward, it's clear, if Texas wants to truly end homelessness, we need more than just quick fixes. We need long-term, sustainable solutions and bold action. That starts with policy reform. One of the most urgent needs, expanding access to affordable housing. Without stable homes, everything else, healthcare, jobs, education, becomes nearly impossible to maintain. Texas can invest in building more low-cost housing units while also renovating existing spaces to serve vulnerable communities. But housing is only part of the puzzle. Future policies also need to focus on prevention, not just reaction. That means offering financial support when families face a crisis, ensuring access to mental health and addiction treatment, and building strong safety nets around education and job security. When people are supported early on, they're far less likely to fall into homelessness in the first place. And let's not forget one key piece that's often overlooked: tenant protection. Clearer laws and stronger protections can help renters avoid unfair evictions and give people time to recover from temporary setbacks before losing their homes altogether. But policy alone isn't enough. We also need true collaboration. The future lies in cross-sector partnerships, bringing together government, nonprofits, businesses, community members, and yes, even people who've experienced homelessness themselves. Everyone has a piece of the solution. By working together, we can pool resources, share data, and advocate for smarter, more connected systems. Imagine a future where health clinics, job centers, schools, and housing programs aren't scattered and siloed, but part of a unified network, all working toward the same goal. This kind of coordination builds efficiency, trust, and lasting change, and more importantly, it makes sure no one gets left behind. Because in the end, ending homelessness isn't just about housing people. It's about restoring dignity, creating opportunity, and building a society where everyone has a place to belong. The road ahead won't be easy, but it is possible, and it starts with all of us choosing to care, to act, and to build a better future together. Homelessness in Texas isn't just a statistic. It's a human story unfolding in the heart of one of America's most dynamic states. Through this journey, we've seen how rising housing costs, economic instability, mental health struggles, and gaps in social support all intersect to create a complex crisis. But we've also seen hope in the tireless efforts of communities, volunteers, and organizations working on the ground every day. We've seen that real change is possible when policy meets compassion and when people come together to build long-term, sustainable solutions. If there's one message we hope stays with you, it's this: homelessness is not just about losing a home. It's about losing connection, safety, and opportunity. And solving it requires all of us, individuals, communities, and systems, to care, collaborate, and act with empathy. At NVL Travel Documentary, we believe every journey is worth telling, not just the beautiful landscapes, but also the human realities behind them. Because understanding the places we visit means understanding the people who live there too. If this story moved you or made you think, feel free to leave a comment and share your thoughts. And if you'd like to see more stories that explore the world through a deeper, more human lens, consider subscribing to the channel. Together, let's keep traveling not just to see the world, but to truly understand it.